and is based on, you know, Esau's history that he got, they still have what? What does this yellow mean? Arawak. Right there, the yellow. The blue means what? Carib Indians. Right there. Now, this purple means what? Black slaves. And then they say that the Black Carib de Garifuna went from St. Vincent's all the way over here and ended up in Belize. Wait, now we have another situation also. What's the other situation we have? What is the center? What is the place that they named when they went to Belize? What is the main city that they have in Belize? Dan Griga. So here we got these Benjamites just happen to name their place Dan, right? They just happen to name the city that they dwelt in Belize, Dan Griga. Of course, they said it means sweet water, but let's say it does mean sweet water. We still have what? These people associating the name with water, which is what Dan did. Dan was associated with ships and with water. Dan wasn't associated with land except for what? The fertile area that he leaped from called Bashan, which is exactly what happened in the Orinoco Delta. They leaped from Bashan. They went from the southern, northern part of South America, and they went into the waters. Oh, and then they have what? What's this called? Dragon's Mouth, right? And then Serpent's Bay, right? You know what it was?
Serpent's Mouth.
No, it was a Boca de...
Dragon's Mouth and Serpent's Bay.
Was it Boca de...
A snake's mouth.
No, it wasn't Boca de Serpiente. I thought it was Boca de Dragones.
They were both mouths.
So Boca de Dragones, and then the Serpent's Mouth. No, it was like Serpent's Bay. Serpent's Bay and Dragon's Mouth. Okay, Serpent's Bay, because Boca. It said Boca de Dragones. You remember? You remember?
They were both mouths. There's
It wasn't
Dragon's Mouth and
Serpent's
Serpent's Mouth.
When I put in Serpent's Bay, it came up. Either way, you still got the serpent and the dragon. So somebody's Dan. Ain't nobody just going around. And then you got what? And then you got the story in Dominica of the snake that came up from the water and made the people. So they identified themselves, the very ground that they walk on, with what? With a serpent. So why are these people going around making all these snake references and naming their cities Dan if they ain't got nothing to do with Dan or the serpent in the scriptures? Why are they doing this? Who's making them do this? Were they trying to throw us off the trail? So somebody went to Dominica and said, hey, make up this legend about the snake. Somebody went to Trinidad and said, hey, name this place Serpent and Dragon, just to throw people off. Make your history leap from a fertile area. Leap from Bashan in South America. Somebody went down there and said, do this, right? Just to throw us off the trail, to make us think that Dan was still around. Has all the attributes of how he could be Dan, but it's not really Dan. You understand what I'm saying? But he's not really Dan. Okay, so even still, you have the problem. 500 BC. By this year, some of the Arawaks have moved up the Orinoco River, sailing from Venezuela, Suriname, and Colombia to the Antilles Islands of the Caribbean. So they came from the inland areas of South America, 500 BC. So this is their supposed time. Okay, and came up there. What is this? Is this a? I wonder why they focusing on. Does that say? That says Grenada, right? Spice Island. They say focusing on Spice. So they were on Spice Island. So they were dealing in spices. That Spice Island. So let's go up on here. What else we got going up on here? St. Vincent. Okay. So they had a nice little outpost. Okay, everybody got that? So they started in Grenada. Okay? The Arawak were later followed by the Caribs. Okay, so in order for these two groups of people to be just followed out of all of the hundreds of different ethnic groups in South America, why are these two the ones that decide to follow each other, to travel together? Because they're family, they're related. Okay, you're not gonna follow a stranger. The Carib mixed with the Arawaks in the Caribbean islands and created a new people. Did it say bland or island Carib? So let me get this straight. For 100 years, and then 1,000 years later, that's how long it took them to start mixing together and become a new people. Even though they coming from the same areas, and the history has them following the same routes. Okay, so now they call them the Island Caribs. Okay, so now slaves come over to the Caribbean, 1492. That's when Satan was given power in the Western Hemisphere to start bringing the Edomites into control of the area. Israelite slaves adopted a Carib way of life and to marry with island Caribs and created new people called Black Caribs. Now this is where the lie comes in at, because we already read from our own people's history. Remember the Garifuna heritage what? We already read that they had already started to come into the Americas, documented in the 1300s. So we have a 300-year head start on what's happening over here. It's already documented. It says 300 years before that, in the 1300s, that free men, that men that were not slaves to Edomites, came over into West Africa. So these were not slaves. And that's also assuming that they came from the different areas and there was none down here. How come people always want to believe that there's only one type of indigenous people? You have different types of indigenous people. So then after that, we have the British taking these people, okay? They take the Black Caribs and Island Caribs and they send them to the island of Belizeau. Okay, we got Belizeau on there. Okay, here it is right there, Belizeau. Now from Belizeau, the British permanently exiled one group of Danites called Black Caribs to the island of Roatan. The lighter-skinned Island Caribs remained on St. Vincent. But the problem is this. One, that wasn't the only place they were at. And two, they admitting now that they had a divide that they created between the light and dark Caribs. Okay? In order for them to exile both of them and separate them, they had to be what? Together. So they say, okay, now this is family structures being broken up. Because remember, the mothers, they said, were speaking Arawak and the fathers spoke more Carib dialect, right? That's what they said. But now we got a problem with that. What was these Carib men doing? What were the Arawak men doing? You know what I'm saying? What were they doing for these 600 years? Because first they said that the Carib men were mixing with marrying Arawak women, right? So who was the Arawak men marrying? And who were the Carib women marrying? Don't make sense, does it? What was it, forbidden to marry within your people? You understand what I'm saying? So the history of how they saying this stuff happened and why doesn't make sense. They were speaking two different languages because they came from two different branches of the same tribal families. And that's part of the heritage of, if the mother's at home taking care of the children, the English is going to develop differently than a father who's going out treading everywhere. Even now, if I take my sons with me down to Belize, okay, take them down with me down to Honduras, and you base at the home and we traveling all of the Caribbean, their English with me is going to be different than their English with you. True or false? So these are just different dialects of, of ancient languages. It's not like it's two totally separate languages. It's just two different expressions of an ancient mother tongue. You understand? So now they separate them by the white man. Literally, the British decided to separate these people by color. Light skin and dark skin. Same thing he did in America, right? You lighter, you better. You darker, you not as good. You more true, you true Mandingo. But I'm gonna hate you more. Now you mix. You ain't truly black, but I'm gonna like you more. Now you better than this one. They tell this one you better than this one to control and rule with me. They tell this one you better than this one because you look more like the original blueprint. So they got every side thinking there's something better about them. And he didn't just start it over in America then. He was doing it here. All right? He had been doing it for centuries. He was doing it from right here he was doing it. Okay? Because between here and here, you got the King Philip War. Okay? You got the King Philip War in New England. All right? Massachusetts, Connecticut, you got Narragansett, Pequot, all in that area. And they took those people from there and sold them as slaves into the Caribbean also. Into Bermuda, okay? Bermuda mostly. And people still, have communities there now where they say that they are, a Pequot. Okay? They still say that they are from the Pequot tribe. Okay? So the point we're making is that even if we do say that the black people in America are Judah, and the black Carib are Benjamin, and the black Haitians are Levi, we still have these so-called Indian people who we know historically, you understand? Historically, these black Indians called the Garifuna were intrinsically connected to the lighter-skinned Indians that are called Caribs now, the Eastern Caribs. They were connected together with the Kalipuna. And what's the other tribe? What's the other one? The Kalipuna and Kalinago. They were related people. And if these black people were so different, why did they have a name that is so similar to their lighter-skinned counterparts? Why do you have a Kalipuna and then have Garifuna, which are Fu and Pu, are interchangeable? Kari, Karifuna or Garifuna, Kalipuna. Okay? You can hear the grammatical or the phonetic connection between those two words, can't you? Who can't hear it? Okay, so we can hear the phonetic connection between Kalipuna and Garifuna. You understand? So the question is, why didn't these, number one, why don't the Garifuna have a native African term that they still use? Number one, okay? Shalom Laka. And number two, why didn't the Kalipuna and the Galinago, why didn't they give these black people who are Benjamites a name that's more befitting strange shipwrecked slaves that appeared among you but are not you? You understand what I'm saying? It's like all of a sudden you go to the north side of your country and you got people that look totally different than you. Strangers, surprise you. And you're going to say, well, these must be Northsiders. We're like, nah, these are like strange people in the north. You know what the focus on the Garifuna means? You know what the word Garifuna means? Or Garinagu? You know what that word means? It is so not descript. And the Most High probably did this for a reason, to let you see that these people weren't looked at as no special or different type of people. You know what that word means? It means cassava eating people. You know what cassava is? It's yucca. Who in the Caribbean doesn't eat yucca? Everybody in the Caribbean eats yucca. But they make like a cassava bread out of it. But they also make cassava bread over in West Africa too. But they're eating yucca in the Eastern Hemisphere and the Western Hemisphere at the same time. Everybody understand? So there's nothing that's different about their culture to make them have a special type of name. Okay? And even today, no group of Benjamites have spread out their identity as Benjamites throughout the Caribbean. Okay? That's not a trait of black people. That's a trait of indigenous peoples in the Americas. Why? Because indigenous people did not have their identity broken as perpetually as so-called black people. Because black people's identity destruction was systematic. It was methodical. It was deliberate. And it served the ends. It serves to the end of molding the workforce, the free labor force, the prisoners of war, the captives, into what you wanted them to be, to produce as much as you could have them produce, right? But with the indigenous people, it was just, you're in a way, move. We're going to make you move. All that, you can keep all that. Now, if we catch you, we're going to make you go to the Carlisle School for Boys, cut your hair, stop speaking your language, and speak the white man's language. But if you stay over in your land, over your little reservation, we ain't going to bother you. That's why you still have these languages today that are indigenous languages. Okay? That's why people still speak them. Because the white man didn't care about what you spoke. Just get out of his way. As opposed to the slaves, they totally had their culture taken away from them. They couldn't speak any languages. They could have any remnants of who they were. Why? Because all these different stories and myths linked up to be the same people. That's why Jamaica and Haiti and South Carolina and the Gullah Islands and the slaves they brought to Jamaica and the slaves they brought over to over into place like South America and over into Maryland and things like that. That's why they had to break them down, because they all had the same type of story, the same historical connect, because of brothers like this. Olaudah Equiano. That's why. That's why they didn't let them, that's why they had to break down their culture, because these memories were so fresh that when they started to speak, they're like, hey, man, we did the same thing as, we did Passover too. We did Day of Atonement, or we did sacrifices, or my mother had to stay away for 7 days too. And it would have been a more conscious rebellion against your native culture if it's passed down to the second generation. Like if you pick these children up right now, they're going to feel a certain kind of way about celebrating Christmas, Witchmas, and eating pig and working on the Shabbat day. They're going to feel a certain kind of way about it. But take that from them, all right, and then, you know, half a generation later, if they have children, those children are not going to think twice about it. Now, when they talking to all these different Hebrews on the reservation, on the plantation, from all the different parts of the country, they say, man, we did this, we did, and we're not supposed to be doing this, man. Like they did in Haiti. They got most of them slaves from the same places. And that's why Haiti's revolution was successful, because there was a family of people trying to get freedom. In America, they had divided up the families and put them in different areas. Haiti's one of the few places where they brought all of the families together from similar tribal backgrounds. Everybody understand? So now, getting back to the tribe of Dan and the tribe of Benjamin, Dan kept his language, his culture, his history, his pre-colonial customs and traditions. that he did not share with nobody in Jamaica, in Belize, all right, in Honduras. He didn't share that with nobody. He didn't share it with the people in St. Vincent. They kept it because everybody knew this is a different culture. They black, but they different black than us. They indigenous, but they're different indigenous than the other indigenous. You understand? So now with the tribe of Dan, with the Garifuna, they kept their culture. And that's not something that's indicative of slave descendants. That's something that's indicative of free men that were displaced. They were displaced Israelites. They had already went through their slavery over in East Africa or over in the Eastern Hemisphere in Assyria. You understand? So we have to really look at all of these different factors and variables in the history and see if we come up with a common result. We don't. Benjamin is a whole different people than Dan. As a matter of fact, the Garifuna will be insulted if you say this rich culture that you had developed, but you guys are the same as the people in Jamaica and Trinidad with no rich pre-colonial culture, with no rich pre-colonial language, with no rich pre-colonial customs. You're the same people as they are. Even though you don't mess with them, you don't identify with them, they don't identify with you, they don't come to your Garifuna Settlement Day, they don't celebrate that with you. You understand? They don't listen to the punta music, okay? The punta music, the paranda music, okay? What else they got? They got the punta, they got the paranda music. Those are the two mainstream. Those are some of the music that have gone mainstream, but they have different forms of music that they sing and use. They didn't pick up reggae. Why? Because reggae is an amalgamation of different musical forms from different parts of the Caribbean and from America, country western and doo-wop, bebop, and R&B being blended together into a different sound. Going back when it originated under ska music, SKA, when it first originated, it has a faster sound than it has now. You understand? So, Benjamite music was not influenced by the West or by Europe or by Judah. Did I say Benjamite? I meant to say Garifuna, excuse me. Garifuna music was not influenced by what the Benjamin was doing, or what Judah was doing in America. It developed on its own, and it's very indigenous. Of course, it has certain elements of West African. It has different West African elements in it. But for people to be displaced from West Africa to the Americas, you would expect that music and that culture to be very, very West African, wouldn't you? But it's not. Even the language is not very, very West African. The language is very, very indigenous. Some of the food, why? Yeah, some of the foods are similar. Why? Because you're dealing with two different people, two similar people in a different, similar geographic area. But you can't go into West Africa and say that, they spoke the West African dialect as thoroughly as we would expect them to speak. Because it would have stayed with us in that migration, and we would have started speaking it over here the same way, and not just get totally engulfed in the indigenous languages over here. Okay. So in Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 22, once again, Dan is a lion's whelp; he shall leap from Bashan. How did Dan leap from Bashan? Orinoco Delta, right? Everybody got that part. Now we went to Ezekiel chapter 27, verse what? Verse 19? When we talked about how Dan was bringing spices from different places. And we said the first stop of Dan when he leaped from Bashan was what? Grenada, which is called Spice Islands. Okay? Now we also see about Molio Uhana. Molliouhana. Okay? M-O, let's say M-O, it's M-A. Molliouhana. Which means what? What did it say it meant? It said it meant arrowhead. Okay? Then some people said it meant arrowhead, arrow-shaped sea serpent. You know that's how? Arrow-shaped sea serpent. But then it comes from Anguilla. Anguilla means what? A sea serpent, which is an eel. So it's a snake in the water. So here we got the snake again, and then we have the water. All right, so we see that this snake is dealing with water. So let's say he's a snake in a way, we might think it's talking about a snake just in the grass. But it's a snake in the water. And the horse that he bites is going back into the ship. And the pirating. Okay? Because the tribe of Dan also, we know, down in Belize, a lot of pirates came from Portugal also, was dark-skinned from the tribe of Dan from Portugal also. Okay? And we have black people, okay? There's a brother in Atlanta that's an Israelite brother whose ancestors came from Portugal to Trinidad as indentured servants. But they black people. You understand? So these are different, these are pockets of Israelites. In other words, everybody black ain't from the so-called black tribes, and everybody black in the Caribbean ain't Judah. Like Judah's just a catch-all tribe. Or these slaves came to Brazil, oh, they Judah. Prove it. Prove they're Judah. Their historical experiences, their type of slavery, their language, their customs, their culture is different than Judah. Now, they might imitate Judah, but so do the Chinese. Japanese rappers imitate Judah. Issachar, brothers in Mexico imitate Judah. They imitate Benjamin also with Mexican reggae, Mexican rap. That doesn't make them Benjamites or Judites. That doesn't make them Jamaican or Black American. But everybody that's black that imitates black people in America doesn't belong to the tribe of Judah, do they? Okay, so a lot of these different black people belong to the tribe where they are. Once again, the problem we have is that there was no Danites, there was no black people, there were no slaves here when the white man came. It was all black free people that spoke an indigenous language. How can you get Benjamin out of that? Where's the history? Where's the documentation? Where's the proof? Because these people come out of their own mouth saying, look, we came from West Africa in the 1300s. And of course, we know from the history that there was already black people over here. We know that alone from what? We know that alone from the Olmecs heads over in Veracruz. That there was deeply rooted black indigenous people in Mexico itself. Way before the Columbus invasion of America. His planned strategic invasion of indigenous Israelite lands. This is indigenous Israelite land that we're standing on. It's not European land. It was conquered and stolen from the indigenous people. But they found Olmec heads over there in Mexico. Okay? Around this area right here, like the Veracruz area, right around here. So when they found those Olmec heads over there, they had thick lips and broad noses. Does that mean they were Judah? No. Does it mean they were Benjamin? No. What does it mean? It means that some Issacharites have thick lips and broad noses. The white man has created this phenological, stereotypical, non-morphing feature category for black people in America and worldwide. Anybody that got these characteristics is black American Judah. And we doing the same thing. Well, you look this way, but then we're going to say there was black Indians, that the Indians were black and everything. I guess Gad is the exception. Okay? You got brothers like John Horse that left from Seminole territory in Florida, then went over on the border of Mexico, and then over into Coahuila, Mexico, The Coahuila or Chihuahua, or over into what is it called? Mascotas. What they call them, mascotas. Nacimiento de los Negros, also called mascota, or the mascotas, over in not too far from the border in Mexico, near Musquis. Put in Musquis, M-U-Z-Q-U-I, M-U-Z-Q-U-I-S. Let's put it put in the search engine right there. No, right here. M-U-Z-Q-U-I-S. Or vice versa. Q-U. Okay, and then put in, go back to the search engine. I knew it was this one. Hit this one, M-U-Z-Q-U-I-Z. And then go back and put in, because they call the Muskogee, I think it's, mascotas is pet, right? I forget what they call them. Put in, nacimiento. Nacimiento. So nacimiento. Now you have the Kickapoo down there. Nacimiento is actually, here it is, Mascogos. Go here. So it tells us la localidad de Negros Mascogos Nacimiento está situado en el municipio de Musquis, en el estado de Coahuila de Zaragoza. Tiene 158 habitantes.